What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert, and this is the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream, episode 88. If you guys haven't heard of Dustin from Tec-Gnar, you should go over to Instagram right now, search him while I do my intro. And while you're at Instagram, you can swing by my page and follow me over there too, at B1KER B1, B1KER B1. So he's at something Tec-Gnar. You can figure it out. TEC and then GNAR. I think it's a dash or a dot or an underscore. I think it's an underscore on Instagram, something like that. Figure it out. You guys are grown adults. I'm sure you can do it. Anyways, I'll have him correct me on that one later. I would like you guys to actually follow me though, because that would be great. I've been looking at those numbers on Instagram, and I'm really close to. I think it's like really close to hitting 4,000. I want to hit 4,000. And those of you guys that don't Instagram and only Facebook, seriously, go over to the B1KER page and just give me a like or a follow. I don't know what they call it over there. I think it's a like. But for some reason, I can't even hit 1,000 on Facebook. And I've been at this for a long time. I feel like I should have 1,000 followers on Facebook. So come on. I know there's a lot of you guys over 40 that don't even have Instagram. You're just all about the Facebook. Swing by there. All you got to do is push a little button. It's like thumbs up or whatever it is. You think I would actually do a little research. I'm telling you guys about how long I've been doing this. I'm like, yeah, there's something over there. You got to push that something. So go do that. I'm sure you guys, if you like listening to me, you like pushing buttons. So head over there, hit that button. But this is the deal. I released some new shirts. I don't know if you got, those of you that don't follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you don't know this. But I released some new shirts lately, and they are selling quickly. People really like the B1KER design. And there's a bunch of different colors, and you can pick one up. Basically, I don't remember how much it is, but it's like $25 or something like that. So you get a shirt and I get $5. You support the channel, put some beer in the fridge, maybe buy some new parts for this bike I'm trying to build, and make videos for you guys. Get people on here and talk about bikes. So that would be exciting if you guys could get over there and do that. If you want to pick up some swag, maybe like a biker hat. I don't have one on. I got the sweet Cali hat on today. You can pick one up over there at the B1KER website as well. And that's just B1KER.com or shop.biker.com. And for those of you guys that want to get right to the page, ain't got no time to waste. Anyways, so episode 88. Wow, I can't believe we're almost at 100. That's nuts. But here we are. And we got Dustin. I'm going to bring him on. I'm going to remember to unmute him before I bring him on. That'd be weird if I didn't do that. What's up, Dustin? How's it going?
I'm trying to figure out your comments here. How do I reply to these comments?
Oh, you can hit that little button on the side to see the comments, but you don't need to bother with comments, man. Oh, otherwise you get all caught up in it, and I try not to pay attention to those guys over there unless they're like
those people
throwing money at me. You know, hey, if you guys want to super chat a bunch of money over there, maybe I'll pay attention to you. But if not, well, you know.
There it is. He was asking a TEC and then underscore GNAR on Instagram.
There you go. Right on, man.
Right there.
How'd you come up with, I mean, let's just go ahead and I guess we're going to get into, how'd you come up with Tec-Gnar? What's that?
I have a day job, but it's like I'm on shift work, right? So I work nights and days and weekends, but they're all 12-hour shifts. And so I was sitting, and it's one of those jobs where unless I go looking for other humans, I don't have to see them. So it's kind of awesome. But I'm on YouTube a lot. And so Tec-Gnar, I was writing on this whiteboard, like, because what I wanted to do originally was, you know, all these Sprinter vans, these Mercedes Sprinter vans and just Ford Sprinter vans, all this stuff. I wanted to outfit them, but this. Now, I know there's a kabillion of them, but this was like 6 years ago I wanted to do it because I saw a couple of them.
Right, you're ahead of the game.
Well, because back then I went on Reddit and YouTube and stuff, and everyone was like hand making all the appliances and stuff in their cupboards and whatever. I was thinking you could so easily just like knock out thousands of these cupboards. You know, they're the right shape that just like put in there and zip, and you're done.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to do that. Now I have no knowledge whatsoever carpentry, cabinetry, automotive, anything. I just knew there was going to be a lot of people doing it because I wanted one, so I figured everyone else wanted one too.
Right.
Anyway, so I was that's what I came up with was Tec-Gnar Vans was going to be my business. And that I think I still own TecGnarVans.com, but the Vans thing didn't work out, so I cut off the Vans, so it's just Tec-Gnar now.
You're all, screw these cabinets, dude. I don't know anything about cabinets. Why the hell am I doing that?
I don't know anything about cabinets.
That was a good eye though, man. You recognizing something coming up.
Well, it's one of those
van
things.
life thing is legit for sure.
Well, I think you could still go in there because I know a lot of people, like, that's half the appeal is the making of the putting in the wood floor and the wood siding and like all the sound deadening and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think if you knew how to do those things, like the wood floors and the cabinets and stuff, I think you could do some modular stuff pretty easily and make.
I feel like there's room for like the IKEA of van life to roll in and just freaking bomb back, like, you know, put these things in a whatever kind of machine that spits out a bunch of furniture. You know what I mean? They're like, get you some like 4 picture instructions with a fake screwdriver in it, and boom, you got yourself a van.
Well, and you know what's funny? What was the final nail in the coffin for that idea is you couldn't buy a Sprinter van. Well, they didn't make very many of them back in the day. They made them for like UPS and stuff. I looked all over like the Western United States and could not find a Sprinter van in all, like, because I wanted to buy a new one. Like, and there's anybody who's looked into this, there's passenger ones with all the seats, and then the Goldilocks for van life is like the 2 front seats and then maybe like a bench and then cargo, you know what I mean? So, but not even the bench half the time. You can buy that aftermarket, but just a cargo van. And you couldn't find them anywhere because they probably knew that FedEx and UPS needed 100 of them, so they made 101 of them.
Right.
And then other people started buying them. Now that you could probably find them now, but I could not find one because I was ready. And other problem, stripped down to nothing. Like, all they are is empty space, right? But if you got the diesel with the 4-wheel drive, they're like $75,000.
Yeah, they're super expensive.
So, and that's before you ever do anything to it. That's just empty van space, you know, for a brand new one. So that's the high barrier to entry on that particular little.
Yeah, it's all. I've been looking at them too, man. I'm kind of like, I really want to talk the lady into it, but she's not buying it. She's like, man, we can get a shit ton of hotels for $80,000, you know. And
that was nail number 2 with that.
Yeah.
Because I've got 2. Well, I've got 3 kids. One's a little older, and he's already moved out and in college and stuff. And then I've got the 2 little ones. So it was like trying to logistically figure out how to get 5 seat belts in this thing was going to be a problem. Because you obviously want the least amount of seats possible, because then you can have beds and showers and blah blah blah. But if you have 5 seat belts, that means you got like 2 cabins and a third, or like a big bench, and then they got to sit next to each other and they don't get along. You know what I mean? So So 25-year-old millionaires with no kids and just a girlfriend, go for it. Like, you don't have any one of those things, you might have a problem.
Yeah, I go back and forth, man. I have this whole like progression of things that I like. How it starts, it'll be like, I'm gonna get a rooftop tent, and then it's like, next thing I know, I'm into like the what are those little? They look like a ham can that you like tow behind it. I forget what they're called right now. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a little trailer. There's like
with the tent on top and then the trailer.
No, they're like it looks like a can of like Spam or some shit like that with 2 wheels on it. Teardrop, a little teardrop trailer.
Yeah, teardrop.
So I'll go to those because those are like $5,000-$10,000. And then next thing you know, I'm looking at friggin' regular trailers, and then I'm back to the van again. And then by the end of that whole like 2 hours of Google, I'm like, $80,000. I'm not spending $80,000. And then I go back to like, fuck it, I'm not doing anything.
Well, and you got to spend $80,000 on the truck to pull it all. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I did meet in the middle. I do have a truck with a with a pop-up tent on it, or like a fold-out tent.
Yeah.
And because we already had a regular camp trailer, because in Utah, that's what we do is camp, right? So I had like all the bases covered, but I wanted to like dump all of that, just get this van. But logistically, it really wasn't going to work out. But so now I've just got the pop-up tent and a real trailer. So I'm just met in the middle.
That's probably best for the size of your family, because otherwise, the only way you're going to sleep everybody in a van at this point, you'd have to get the van and then have the ones that they have like a pop-up tent that you can put on top of it, so you can like crawl through the roof to get up there. Yeah. But I mean, you got 3 kids, you might just give up until they're out of high school, dude.
Yeah.
So exactly. How do you get into painting?
Well, my dad used to do like classic car type stuff, like show cars. He had a day job also. He was actually a coal miner. We're in coal country down here in it's like eastern Utah. But, so on the side, he would restore old cars, for people, or just they would restore them and then he'd paint them stuff. So my summer jobs growing up, I hated, of course, but were just sanding for my dad. You know what I mean? Because there's always just sanding to be done.
Because that's the time-consuming part.
Exactly. So you got a big paint job, and like maybe 10 minutes of it is actual painting, and there's like 10 hours of just behind-the-scenes prep shit that no one likes.
Right.
That's boring and dirty and probably give you cancer for breathing it in. But so anyway, so I knew all that, but honestly, like not a chance in hell that I would ever be painting cars, because it's not that I don't like cars, like I just not that into them, right? And then but I just do stuff because so he's got this big shop, like 2 big bays and then an actual paint booth to turn cars out of, right? And I'm sitting in there one day, I'm really into bikes, and you go on Instagram, and this was probably 5, 6, 7 years ago now, you'd see like every once in a while, like Seminuk could have some kind of a cool custom painted bike. It wasn't that big at the time. Right. And then somebody else would have one. And then there were the Rampage bikes, right? Everyone would have like something custom for Rampage. And so I was just scrolling through Instagram, like, God, I wonder how cool are those bikes? I'm like, I wonder how much people are charging for those bikes. And I'm like look up at all the air lines, and I look over at the air compressor, and there's stacks of paint over here, and there's a whole bay of paint guns over here. I'm like, holy shit. It was just like an epiphany right then. I was like, I ran home, and I had this road bike that I hardly ever ride, but it was start sanding on it, and I'm like trying to do as much, like trying to remember how the hell to do everything, because I haven't done it. Well, I mean, I've done the bodywork stuff, but I've never done the paint. Like my dad always painted. He was the painter, right?
Right.
So
you were just a sander.
So, yeah. So we kind of double teamed that very first one, and then I posted that, and then I had a fat bike, right? So I did that one next, and I had a dirt jumper, and I did that one next. And honestly, by the end of those 3 bikes that I did, I was like, bam, right into people wanting to pay me to paint their bikes. Like, because I was already in the bike world. I did some videography down in Moab a lot, because I'm kind of by Moab, like an hour away from Moab. And so
what were you doing there? Just like a YouTube channel, or you were helping film? Or
well, and that was part of the van thing too, was I wanted to film stuff. But again, the problem with that particular thing is like, you got to be the dude that's ready to just fly anywhere, do anything at any time, if you want to be the videographer guy. I think, having a day job and kids, that kind of killed that whole thing. So what I'm saying is, I already had the following, so I posted some custom bikes, and it just immediately, it wasn't like I was starting from ground zero with bikes, like, so that kind of helped, I guess.
Were you doing, was it Tec-Gnar at that point that you were using as a name, and you were posting the bike stuff, or you had like a different Instagram at that point?
It was the same site, you know what I mean? But I have changed the name, but it used to be Every Angle Films. But then I changed it to Tec-Gnar.
I get it. Okay.
Everyone thought it was Every Angel Films, and I was like, God, read, please.
Right.
So
public education.
So I had to change it anyway. And then that just kind of naturally just kind of died on the vine because there's so many people out there. Well, like we were talking about barriers to entry for the vans being very expensive. The barrier to entry to be a videographer, like air quotes, is nothing. Your cell phone nowadays, your iPhone will take a hell of a video. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
$600 on GoPro stuff and like a camera and a couple mounts, and you're good to go. So I mean, but then there's like you can get up to medium, like decent, pretty easy, but it's like getting past that to like pro. Yeah, is where it's hard to do because number one, you got to be a good rider. Number two, you got to know, like, you got to learn your white balances and your frame rates and your like how to get YouTube to not murder your video with their compression. You know what I mean? Because everyone remembers those first YouTube videos like of GoPros, how it'd be like just like compressed to oblivion. Like you'd be and like everything was just like big blocks of stuff.
Right. So, right on, man. What's your day job? What do you do for the day job?
I work at a power plant. So I worry about water pH because pretty much how you make power a lot of times is heating up water. Like the heating up of the water is where the differences come in, whether it's nuclear or gas or coal or whatever, solar sometimes. So it's just heating up water to a steam. Steam turns the turbine and makes the power. And then, so my world is water pH.
There you go.
I worry about water pH all day, you know. So.
And you don't have to deal with any people, so that sounds fun.
And I don't have to deal with people because every time someone comes down, I get some kind of disgusting looking water sample and be like, I gotta go. And just you have a sample and a clipboard and walk with purpose.
Yeah, and then nobody bothers you, right?
Yeah. Like, sorry, I can't talk right now. Sorry.
Yeah. I learned that in the military. Just walk around like you have something to do, and people will just leave you alone, man.
When people talk, you just grunt and keep on walking. Yeah.
So, how'd you get into riding?
I was about 260, 270 there for a sec. And
how tall are you?
6 foot.
Okay.
So I didn't wear it well. If
that's so you're packing it on then, right?
And I bet this guy at my job that I could lose more weight than him because he was an older dude that was pissed. We were both just sitting complaining about how fat we were and stuff.
Right.
And I had, like, the week before, I had like sneezed and it like hurt my back for a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd never really had back problems, like, because I did construction back in the day and all that kind of stuff. But so I was strong, but I sneezed wrong, and I ended up with, like, if my back hurt for a week, I was like, I got to lose some weight. And so me and this guy were talking. So I bet him I could lose more weight, and we gave ourselves like 9 months, on this big thing. We bet like $100. We both I ended up losing 60, and I think he lost 60 also. But he started out lower, so because we did a percentage thing, you know what I mean? Because I was a lot higher than him. So he won. We tied on actual pounds, but he won because it was a percent thing.
I know how that goes.
But it was $100 to lose 60 pounds. That's good money. I'd do that.
Yeah, dude, that's probably worth it, man. It's totally worth it. I just lost. I recently lost 60 pounds myself, man.
Feels good. Huh?
Yeah, dude, definitely ride a lot different. That's for sure. So it was the bet that got you into riding. So you weren't even into bikes before that?
Well, I had bikes as a kid, and I had mountain bikes back in the day, but like they were probably nice for back in the day. But then there was, like, all through my high school and college years.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't not a biker, but I didn't really have bikes. You know what I mean? But I went down to the bike shop because I had lost some weight, but then I got all this energy. I want to go out and do stuff. I had started running and then I started noticing these triathlons. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I go down to look at road bikes, and I ended up buying a hardtail. It was the 29er rock hopper, special rock hopper, which is their hardtail. And it was like $800, right? Which I thought was ridiculous, but I was like, you know what? I just lost a lot of weight. I want to keep it off. $800, nothing, right? So I'm riding it on roads. I'm riding this rock hopper on dirt roads and stuff and getting beat to hell. And then I'm like climbing this dirt road, and I see this this trail that goes right across the road. And I'm like looking on both sides, and I'm like, so I tear off down this trail and follow this trail. That was my first mountain bike trail. And I go into the bike shop. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? They're like, oh yeah. And they show me this map. And I'm like, oh my God, there's all these mountain bike trails around me. So I started riding all these trails, and the rock hopper beat the hell out of me. Right. And so at that time, you know, because I'd gone into the shop and I'd seen these road bikes and these full suspension bikes. I'm like, you people are nuts. Like, I can just get this bike and do both of those things. And you're all idiots for spending all that money. Right. And then like a month later, honest to God, I went back in there and I'm like, okay, I know why you need that bike, and I know why you need that bike, and I want to buy both. And let's get some kind of a package deal going here. And so I bought a Tarmac, an SL4 Tarmac, which was like top of the line. It had red, SRAM red components on that. It was like,
oh, there you go, shit. Yeah.
And I bought the Santa Cruz LTC when it first came out. It was that brown and orange one. And that was a cool bike. And so I went from
like
this
the lead up to the high tower, wasn't it?
What's that?
Kind of like the lead up bike to the high tower. Wasn't that like it was like a longer travel 29er, but they didn't have the high tower yet or something like that. I'm trying to remember. Well,
yeah, so they had the tall boy, and I don't remember what the geometry was with it, but I think it was like a 120 fork and rear suspension, but like super steep head angle and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the LTC was the long travel carbon, I think, but they raked it out a little bit and put a 140 on it.
Yeah, they were going big back then, right?
Yeah. And 29ers were even like kind of a new thing back then. You know, this was
for sure.
This was 2011, so I was 10 years ago now. So so then after that, it was like I was all over. So I started doing triathlons and stuff like that, and I was hitting Moab, and so I was like, because you know how you kind of gotta like pick a thing, because like everything is kind of expensive, so you can't just kind of do everything. It's almost like you gotta do one thing, like whether it's like jeeping or going to car shows or whatever. Like, so I was like, well, bikes are good for you, and I'll just get into bikes. So I just got balls deep into bikes.
There you go, man. I'm a little biased, but I feel like it's a good decision.
Exactly. Well, because now, I mean, I'm N+1 all day. So I've got the gravel bike. I've still got that road bike. I've got a fat bike. I've got a ski bike. I got this bike. I got a full suspension. My full suspension right here. So I've got hike bikes hanging in my garage. I got bikes hanging in my house.
Yeah.
And I call them art because they're painted. That's why I've got them hanging in my house. My wife just rolls her eyes at me 20,000 times a day, but
at least you can get away with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're like,
because it's good for you.
Right. It's totally good for you, man. What's most challenging about painting bikes compared to, you know, back in the day when you were helping out with the cars?
Well, cars are obviously like big flat surfaces, right? And so, you know, when you're painting a car, it's just like psh, 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 You know what I mean? You're just like that. But with bikes, you're like get out of yoga class and you're like spraying all over the place, and there's like converging pieces of like tubing that are all over the place. And so if these two tubes are here and you paint this one, you paint this one, guess what? You just extra painted right here. And so that's just like asking for runs. You know what I mean? So it's all these converging lines make it really hard to not run the shit out of the paint and the clear. And you just kind of, I've just got like a thing, like I kind of do the same every time now. And so I've kind of eliminated most of that. That was the hard part, because my dad's like, we're sitting there looking at a bike and goes, I don't know how you're going to not run the hell out of that. You know what I mean? Because you've got a little tiny tube like this, and your fan on your air gun is like this. You know what I mean? So
the little tiny tube, just for the people that are listening, the little tiny tube that you made a hand signal with was like the size of a pea, and the fan that you're showing is probably about 6 inches, maybe 8 inches. Okay. And
so like when you're painting, you obviously hit the thing, but then there's stuff right behind it too. You know, like let's say you're painting a seat stay. You just picture that in your mind, listeners, like painting a seat stay, but there's the other seat stays right behind it, not to mention the chain stays below it, and the seat tube is right there. So it's like you got all this possibility for over spray and double coating and all that kind of stuff. So that's the hard part about it, because like I said, you're painting a hood and it's all right there. I mean, and the car industry is set up to where like there's machines or like stands that their only job is to hold hoods upright. And so you put your hood on there and you just do your thing, and life is easy because people made it that way, but nothing like that for bikes. Right. So.
Right. And then like every bike frame from every company is different than the other one. So it's not even like there's like some standard, like back in like the 70s, it was probably pretty easy to paint bikes because like pretty much all the frames were the same. You know, it was like you got a Raleigh or you got a Schwinn or whatever, like they're like the same size tubes. And it's just like the welds are different and the head badge, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so if somebody has a road bike or something, those are pretty much all the same. And the front and the rear triangle are hooked together, right? Which makes it kind of nice. Now you give me a full suspension bike, and I have to separate those two things, the front and the rear triangle.
Yeah.
And so the front triangle is fairly easy to do because it's all wide open now. Like there's nothing on the back to like get in your way. So the front triangle is easy, but the rear triangle is like all compact as hell, and it's got all these weird geometries. Like they'll be like, you know, when they converge to like the rear axle, I mean, that a lot of times is really tight. And then, you know, a lot of times like an evil following or something, you know what I mean? Like the rear triangle, the angles on it are really tight, like acute, if I remember geometry correctly, acute angles. So that's the barrier to entry, or the barrier to doing a good job with bikes for sure. And like you said, we kind of talked about the prep, because I got to sand all those spots, right? Because back in the day, like picture 12-year-old me, like, I just want to go to the pool with my friends. I'm sanding, and my dad would come in and be like, that's shiny, that's shiny, that's shiny. Like shiny, if anything is shiny, that means the new paint will not stick to it. That's where the purpose of sanding is, to give the new paint something to grab onto, right?
Right.
So if that, you know, wheel well has, or if there's an indentation like where a rivet is or something like that, or on bikes now it's like, you know, around this like the water bottle rivets and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the mounts.
You gotta get right down in there, because if you don't, that's where it's going to chip, and it's going to chip like 6 months down the road. And the guy's probably not going to say anything about it, but he's going to be just pissed and might tell all of his friends like, yeah, it looked good, but now it's chipping all over the bubble, you know?
Yeah, I would
So
bet
those are the
even with
little,
like all the internal tubing stuff, like there's like little inlets and kind of like
yep.
insets that you gotta. So are you using just regular sandpaper, or is there something that's like a little more like pliable, like some kind of, I guess there's not like really a sand cloth, right?
There is actually, it's just Scotch pad is what
Uh-huh.
it's like, Scotch Brite, and they've got different colors like white, gray, and reddish, kind of brownish red color,
Mhm.
and
I only know the
it's
green
just
ones.
like a,
I use them with sink.
yeah. Well, and that's what it is, but it's different grits, because that's what
Uh-huh.
sandpaper comes in, is grit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but the red is like the equivalent of 320 grit, and that's
Uh-huh.
exactly what you do with it, because you can get like a long piece of it, and I hold it like this and go down the seat stays. You know what I mean? For
Hmm.
people listening, I'm like milking a cow motion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just bend it
Little
over
baby
the
cow.
frame and just kind of like this all the way down
Yeah, yeah,
and get
yeah.
the tight spots.
Huh. So
So
how long does
so
that
there.
process take?
Well, uh, obviously it depends, and depending on how much paint there is, because well, Specialized, for example, right now on a lot of their new stuff, they've got like it's like bare carbon. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you can see the actual carbon layup in their stuff. So
right.
there's literally no paint on that. So that would take me 5 minutes to prep for additional paint. Now
Okay, yeah, yeah.
you give me some uh, like road bike that has all kinds of decals and designs all over it. That'll take me a long time because I got to sand clear through. And to be honest with you, what you find out as a painter is you'll be sanding and you'll have this shiny red, like B1KER or some other brand like that, and it'll be red. You're sanding through it, and you sand through it. It's like then it turns green, then it turns orange, then it'll be down to primer, and then you're finally to carbon. And you go back and look, and it just turns out that that same model of bike is orange this year. It was green 2 years ago, and it was pink or whatever the other color I came up with 4 years ago. They repaint their bikes. You
Oh,
know what I mean?
wow.
Because if they don't sell them, and I'm not saying Bianchi's listening, I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
making,
yeah.
you're just the first name
Some
that
of
came
these
to mind.
companies, though.
Like
That's
you'll
interesting.
sand through and you like, you see previous years' colors. I'm like, oh, I
Right.
see what you're doing,
Oh,
But
that's interesting. I wouldn't even thought of that. So it's
yeah,
like
so
let's say like the Santa Cruz High Tower, like it's the same frame for 4 years or whatever until they update
mhm.
it. Interesting.
Well,
Well, they're
because in
definitely
every
probably
year they
not
have a
having that.
different color.
Yeah, they're probably not having that problem this year. That's for sure, right?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Everything
But
sold the fuck out.
so anyway, the hard part is, yeah, it's the prep, because again, number one, nothing can be shiny because then the new paint won't stick. If you can get, the other problem is, let's say some other bike has been painted 3 times, and I try to put a fourth coat on top of it. There are like 15 different ways that paint could be a shitty paint job, because it's layers and layers and layers. So you got your primer, and then your color, and then your clear, and then somebody else primers and colors and clears. And if any one of those isn't good, and then I try to half-ass it and put my stuff on top, like
Yeah.
their stuff could be chipping. I could have done a decent job, but if their stuff is chipping, it's taking mine off with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
you got
get
to
it.
get all the way through that to bare carbon or aluminum or steel or whatever you're dealing with,
Yeah.
if you want to have any kind of security that your job is going to be the one that's on display. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
somebody else's job could screw up your job.
Yeah, I mean,
You
and it's not like what you're doing for somebody's pretty cheap. I mean, what I think on your
know?
website, it's a grand, right? For somebody to for you to do a bike.
Yeah, we started $1,000 for one color and the logo.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of flexible with what one color means, because honestly, like if you just wanted black on black, that's going to cost me almost the same as like super sparkly pink on green with green logos or something like that. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So one color kind of covers a lot of options. Where the money kicks in is like let's say you want me to do your fork lowers. Complete pain in the ass to do that. A helmet. Helmets are tough to do. They're very small, but you got to mask all those little holes out and all that kind of stuff. And they're so they take a weird amount of time, even though they're so small. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's kind of where the money's at.
Or like your bike behind you, the one that I used, the one I used on the Instagram post. Like, there's a lot of different details in that. So there's
a lot of detail in that.
Right. So that's where whenever people were like, hey, I want, palm trees and a spider web and a 15 colors and a Pollock paint job on this, like, then that's obviously, and I guess it's probably the pricing is based off of the amount of time that you think that it's going to take.
Yeah. Well, because like you see it, God, I'm on opposite here, but I faded a lot of this. So it's like blue faded in, yellow faded into pink. Fades are easy because I can literally just paint blue and then paint yellow right over it. I don't have to do anything. But if you want blue and then like some kind of hard line to yellow, that means I got to do the blue, wait for it to dry, mask off that area, paint yellow, wait for it to dry, unmask. You know what I mean? So it's little stuff like that where people will come up with an idea, and I'll be like, look, that's going to be about $1,600. And then I'll be like, but instead of those hard lines, if you want to just fade that, like that's going to knock $100 off of there.
Yeah.
Because that's a 5 minute of just changing paint color in my gun to continuing on versus waiting for this paint to dry, masking, doing this. You know what I mean? So and a lot of times people are like, how is that cheaper? Because they'll come up with even more colors. But what'll be funny is I'll be sitting there either on a phone call, like pain in the ass factor cascading down behind me when they come up with this idea.
Right. That's funny. So when you're painting somebody's bike, it's their job to bring it to you totally disassembled and like all the bearings and everything out of it, or do you just like
preferably. Well, people sometimes people like just drop ship me bikes, and that's not ideal. So like they ordered a bike from wherever, Yeti for example, and instead of having it go to them, they just have it drop shipped to me. I try to talk them out of that because I can work on a bike fine. Like I work on all my own stuff, right? But I don't want to lose that one little thing, that one little washer or that little collet bolt thing. You know what I mean? It's like that keeps me up at night because I've had people be like, "Hey, I don't suppose you've seen this?" Blah blah blah. I'm like, I probably have, but I probably kicked it under my fridge in my shop and had no idea. You know what I mean? Right. So an ideal paint job, let's say you want to be the best customer ever, which makes me want to be the best painter ever. Like they would, like a new bike is great because grease is like the enemy of paint, right?
Right.
So if you somehow give me a greaseless bike and it's completely disassembled, like there's no covering on it, because a lot of times they'll have like clear bra on some stuff, like on the chainstay. If all that's taken off and you hand it to me, because every one of those things is extra time for me, because that clear thing on the chainstay, I'm either going to have to pull it off, and when I pull it off, it's going to leave a bunch of glue, and then I'll have to sand all that off. Now I guess they would have the same problem too, but then it's their time, not necessarily my time. You know what I mean? But, right. So yeah, it's just stuff like that is very helpful when it comes completely ready to go and clean, right?
Yeah. So then, whenever they ship it to you, like what's your deal? Like they pay shipping both ways, or you like pay for it one way and they pay for it the other way, or?
They pay for it both ways, but I usually work some kind of a deal, like, because I know like
frames aren't super heavy though either. So like, I mean, it's probably not a lot to ship it,
especially when it's taken apart. When you don't have to fit wheels and handlebars and stuff in there too, like you can get a frame, especially if you like if you got a full suspension and you take the rear tri off the front tri, you can get them. You can get a bike in a rim box. Like I get a lot, or even a helmet box sometimes. Like I get a lot of Industry 9 boxes with bikes in them, or NV boxes with bikes in them, you know. So and so I bet the average shipping cost for a completely torn down bike is like $50-ish.
Yeah, so it's not super expensive.
It's not, no. And you know, that's, I think, the secret ingredient to why this paint thing has taken off, because I'm doing it from all over. I've got a bike from California right now. I've got 2 bikes from Florida on their way in. We've done bikes from Canada. Now, through a dealer, I did a bike for New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
We've done bikes for the Middle East, like famous Middle Easterners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, the shipping is not a big deal for most of this. And like I said, you know, like this bike right here, and for those listening, I'm pointing to NV bars, NV stems, NV rims, SRAM Eagle cassette. Like that cassette is, as we all know, we hate to talk about it. I hate to even think about it. That's like a $600 cassette, right?
Right.
When that whole drivetrain right there is like $2,100 or something, you know, to buy an Eagle drivetrain. When you're talking about that just for the drivetrain, what the hell's $1,000 paint job at this point? You know what I mean? Because just there's so much money in these bikes that that's kind of, well, and it's like that meme you see where it's like this guy like counting out nickels for lunch for him and his kids and stuff. And then when he's talking about bikes, he's like making it rain off his yacht.
Right.
So
yeah. I think right now too, like what I was saying I think I wrote in the show more was, you know, with the way that there's a bike shortage right now, like you could get a used bike that maybe has seen some bit of action, and you can go get it painted and make that thing look like it's off the showroom floor, you know?
Right. Well, I know I've been doing that for a bunch of people because okay, let's talk personal stuff here. Day jobs suck. I don't want a day job, right?
Right.
I would love to be the dude that just paints bikes full time. That would be fantastic. But now, me being a rational adult, the first stumbling block that comes to mind is, number one, you can live for a long time without a new bike, and you can live even longer without a custom painted bike, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, picture a year and a half ago, me having that thought, and like, you know, it could turn south anytime now. You know, we could go into some kind of depression, and I'd never paint another bike, and I just can't do it. I just got to stay with the day job. Then the coof hits, right? The world ends, in air quotes. I've never been busier than last summer.
Yeah.
I did not have 1 minute to myself all last summer. I was painting bikes. We were doing all kinds of stuff because, number one, they could just ship it to me. Number two, I'm in my own shop, so it's not like they could shut me down or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not around anybody to need to be separate, right? So they would just mail me their bikes. And the other thing, you know, people are into bikes now. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
you know, maybe like people aren't sending me a whole lot of full suspensions, but if you got a fat bike, if you've got a gravel bike, like they're not going to come out with new gravel or fat bikes next year. Like those bikes are pretty much where they are and where they need to be. And you could do something to them and keep them for 5 or 10 years with a cool paint job. Versus full suspensions, they're constantly upgrading stuff. New this, new that, new.
Yeah, they'll move a bolt like 2 millimeters, and all of a sudden the thing makes your freaking head explode when you ride because you're like, oh my god, it's so good. You know, like
so yeah, like fat bikes and that kind of stuff, or your daily commuter, that kind of stuff is where a lot of people are wanting to get them painted. because like I said, they're going to keep that bike for a long time. Like, because I've got a Kona Wazo, whatever fat bike. That's my favorite bike by far. I put 10-to-1 miles on that to anything else I own, and they're never going to make that any better. No one's going to make a better fat bike than that. So I'm going to paint that thing over and over and over again. And that's kind of where people are a lot of times, I think, and you can't be like dude with one bike just got into it. That's not where he's at. I'm talking like the guy with 5 other bikes, but this is his favorite one and he's just going to keep this one around. That's the one that they're having painted a lot of times. Yeah,
no, I hear you. I definitely on the road bike, the gravel bike, I can see it there. You work with Richard from Sticker too. He helps do decals for you to match up some stuff, right? So like, I feel like if you're the one bike guy, like, and you want it to be a little different, or you're maybe you have 2 or 3 bikes, but you don't want to spend a lot of money, like, then that's the way to go. But in perspective, when you have a build that's an $8,000 build, to spend another $1,000 to get something that's just totally personalized. I mean, I think that's it's a personal preference thing, but to me, I feel like the workmanship that it takes to do something like that. I mean, look at the bikes that are on your Instagram, dude. There's some pretty freaking sick paint jobs on there. Like, I'm like, how the hell did he even do that? I don't even know. Like,
honestly, I look back, I'm like, how the hell did I do that?
Because you have one where it's like an American flag kind of in the background and like speckle and this and like that part's one color, and it's just it's really amazing to me. It's definitely like not in my skill set. I can't even fucking rattle can a piece of cardboard, dude, without like somehow dripping paint and it's laying flat. I'm like, how do I get run marks when it's laying flat? I don't even know.
How gravity even works.
Right.
Well, honestly, I think some people think different ways. I have the ability to like physically walk myself through every paint job. Like when somebody gives me an idea, I can mentally walk through it. And then too, somebody will come up with something and I either talk them off of it or change their mind. And I'm decent enough with Photoshop to like put an idea onto a bike, you know what I mean, to kind of show them what I'm talking about or what they're talking about. So we go that way with it a lot. And sometimes people are like, here's a frame, go nuts. You know what I mean? I'm like, ooh, that's scary. I don't know if you want me to do that. But
because you have no idea like what they're into. I mean,
my nuts might be different than your nuts, that's for sure.
Right. But next thing you know, you got a bunch of little penises all over your frame.
Well, let's talk about Stickered for a second. Old Richard came out with his buddy Jason. They came
from
out
Cali.
From Cali to buy a bike rack because
no, I'm saying Jason works for Cali Protectives.
Right. From Cali. Cali.
Yeah.
He works for Cali with a K, lives in Cali with a C.
Right.
So they drove out to buy a Velocirax, which is in Utah, which I work with a lot, which are cool guys.
I just met them like a week ago at a local event. So probably going to have them on the podcast here. So I'm going to get us off topic though. You shine the shiny ball at me for a second. So
no, they're nice guys, just normal dudes, just like hit a goddamn jackpot in bike racks.
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyway, he comes out and I tried talking. He's coming clear from California and he's like, hey, where are we going to ride? And I was like, Moab, what the hell else are you going to do if you come to Utah? They kind of waffled on me. They're like, well, that's another hour and a half out of blah, blah. I'm like, you're in Utah in May. That's what you do. There's nothing open in Salt Lake. Like the resorts aren't open yet because we just got done snowing like a week ago, And so I'm like, so I finally kind of got him talked into that. So I set it all up and we did the whole enchilada for everyone out there listening, but we did 3/5 of an enchilada, which is cocoa down, right? So we did because Hazard and Burrow aren't open yet, again, because it just stopped snowing a week ago. And So we went and did that, and you should see, like, people would stop us for my bike, and they're like, "Oh, Tec-Gnar, yeah, it's blah blah blah." I follow you. And I'm like, "This is sticker." They're called sticker. No way, that's you. And so, but the penis is all over the bike. We ran into one dude with literally that he had done that for.
Yeah.
So he had little wieners all over his bike. So, full
Yeah,
circle on that story.
Yeah. I've seen that. There's decals that he did. It's pretty funny.
He's talented, dude, because he drew up. Well, I did this, but he drew up that for people listening. It's just a cool cartoon version of my face on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet. But
yeah, he's definitely he's got a great sense of humor, and he artistically definitely really, really good at what he does. That's for sure. I like Richard. He's a good dude.
Well, and so he's the guy that's kind of pushing me the most on this stuff, because he's helped me out a lot, because people will want something specific, and he's like, "Well, I can't really do that," and he could send it to anyone in the world. For some reason, he's chosen to send it to me, which I'm eternally grateful for. So he's really helping me with getting my name out there and everything, and the eventual move towards full time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bike painting. So that was cool to meet him.
So you feel like you're going to do that? You're going to pull the trigger, quit the day job?
I'm feeling it pretty strong. If my boss is listening, sorry, man. Nothing personal. I highly doubt it though, but because the thing is like I own the shop. I have zero overhead, right? So it's like it's the easiest slam dunk thing in the world. It's just that I've got a wife and kids, and it's a little risky. Does your wife work? Yeah, she does actually. So
you can get benefits from her.
Yeah, she's got the insurance because she works for the state. So we actually only use her insurance, because mine, I have the option to like opt out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's X amount of money, and so we opt out of mine anyway. So it's like, yeah, like all the little boxes or all the ducks are lined up in a row for me to do that. I just need to do it, but it's scary,
Yeah, it's totally
so
scary.
Everyone out there, send me some bikes. That's
right.
Because if I were busy, then all that scariness would just disappear.
Right. So, I mean, have you been pretty busy? Like, how long have you been doing like the painting the bikes? Like you said that you got go ahead.
About 6 years now, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is last summer is when I've been busiest. But see, I've never advertised. You know what I mean? I just post on Instagram. That's all I do with it, pretty much. Right. Which is not nothing. I mean, Instagram's really cool for that,
Right. There's definitely plenty of people there looking.
Right. And so I've been just baseline for 3 or 4 years now, where it's like I've got my day job and then I've got this extra thing, and it's just fine. But it's starting to get to where like one or the other has got to go, because my kids are starting to call me Dustin, like like because I work 8 hours or something, and then I work for another 3 hours at the shop, and so it's one of those things has got to quit. It's got to, and so I would much rather quit my day job than quit painting bikes, So but that's that's where the teaming up and stuff, because I teamed up with Velocirax, or one of their like kind of best riders is Christian Pepper. I've teamed up with him a bunch of times, and Richard. And then another thing that we're kind of working with that you and I were going to talk about with Wolf, and with another couple possible companies to do a giveaway. Somebody will procure a bike, I will paint it, and then we will give it away and everything. And so somebody's going to end up with a cool bike, and we'll end up with a lot of press, hopefully.
And that, for those of you, I don't know if it was the same for everybody else, but on my end, it kind of cut out a little bit when you said that. So you were talking about the Lone Wolf. If you guys aren't familiar with them, they do basically like I guess a lot of reviews and stuff like that on things. And so they're going to be putting together this giveaway, and my understanding is somebody's coming up with a bike. I don't know what kind of bike it is at this point, but it's going to be a bike, and it's the best kind of bike, the free kind. And then so you're going to do like a whatever they want kind of custom paint job, or where's the so
I'm sure we'll go nuts with it.
How does that process work? Like, how do you go through that? Somebody just, they call you up, they tell you like, I'm thinking about this, and then you design it on Photoshop and show them, you guys go back and forth, or how does that work out?
I'm sure that's how it'll go. And they might tell me to come up with something, and then we might just go back and forth a couple times. Cause I've kind of got a thing going right now with the 80s colors and all that kind of stuff. So maybe they'll want to ride with that, or maybe we'll go back to the 70s and do some super red, orange, and greens or something. I don't know. We'll have to find out, but it'll be cool either way,
But I mean, how does it work with the customer? Like, so it's not the person on the giveaway. Like, how does that process go? They're just like, hey man, what's your address? I'm going to send you the bike. Or like, how do you normally go through that like creative process with somebody?
Well, a lot of times it's kind of like holding hands and walking through, because they're like, I don't know, I want something cool, but I don't know what to do, and so there's paint companies, and I'll just I'll send them a link to a paint website, and like go in there and find a cool color, because all that color changey stuff that's out there right now, like it's pink from this direction, it's green from this. Yeah, I'll send them to those kind of websites and have them pick out a color, and then we'll talk about that kind of stuff. So we could either go that way, or sometimes they come to me with it already drawn up, like either hand drawn on a napkin or actually photoshopped up, which is great. If they know exactly what they want, that's fantastic. Or I've got a bike in the shop right now for a dude from California that just does a whole bunch of just group rides out there. And he goes, I just want my bike to be the flashiest bike out there. I was like, okay, number one, we're got to do super sparkly. You know what I mean? So we did that holographic sparkle that's kind of got like a rainbow color scheme to it, but the effect is kind of harsh. So it kind of looks holographic. It looks like it's glowing almost. It's really pretty paint. Oh, and wow. Right. It was a Cannondale. So we kept that kind of Cannondale green for the logos. So it's an awesome bike. But I did this green that kind of glows in the sun, because I don't know how much you know about paint or not or whatever, but pearl is a term in paint for like a really, really like microscopically fine flake, right, or sparkle, but it's so small that it picture a car that you've seen that's like it'll be white, and then but in the sun it glows yellow or orange or something like that. Yeah. And that so it's like it's got this one color, but with the sun it's got this whole other color. That's usually a pearl. And so you could do stuff with that, or we can just do flat colors. Like I have a lot of people, honestly, a scary amount of people that just want black on black. Like they want matte black with gloss black logos. So that's a thing. There's people just sometimes I walk them through. Sometimes they know exactly what they want. So it's kind of all across the board.
So if you guys are kind of collaborating, then sometimes you'll build take their bike and do something on Photoshop, and then they can kind of see it from there. And you got how many times you usually end up going back and forth? Is it usually pretty quick, or I don't know, how's that?
It's usually pretty quick, but again, it can be all over the place. I'll tell you what, the one thing, and if anybody else out there is listening that's a painter, I'm sure they will they're nodding their heads furiously when I talk about this, but matching paint, because sometimes people will want their stem. They just want their stem painted the same red as whatever else they've got. And if you don't send me a physical piece of that bike, if you just send me pictures, number one, you might be taking that picture in the shade or in the dark or in the sunlight, and and you might have some kind of weird ass setup on your phone to where you've got your white balances all off. And if anybody knows anything about photography or videography, like trying to get the same color across all cameras and cell phones and laptops, YouTube, it's ridiculous. So like I deal with this one company that they're an actual manufacturer, but they'll come up with some like some very specific colors that they want, but they're just picking them off like a color wheel. You know what I mean? So it's like a media guy saying, "Ooh, these two colors look together," and they'll tell me like it's Pantone, such and such and such. I'm like, Pantone doesn't exist in paint. Like paint is literally, it's not like adding red and blue and getting purple. It's like there could be 15 different blues to get that one purple that you want, and I don't necessarily know that. So honestly, the thing about paint is a lot of times, like cars, if you want to match a car, there's a specific paint code for that color. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I'm gonna have to like pretty much just free pour until I get a color for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there aren't infinite paints. There are not infinite shades of red in paint. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the hard part, is when somebody does draw it online and says they want Pantone whatever. I can't necessarily make that. That might not exist in real life, you know?
Yeah. Well, not only that too, like I do IT, that's my day job, and you can have different colors from different monitors as well. Like, so your like on their monitor
next to each other will be different.
Yeah. And so on their monitor, this red might look like sick as hell red, and on your monitor it looks like baby puke red, and you're like, you know what I mean? So you're like, oh, okay, they want baby puke, you know, and then they're not going to be happy.
Exactly.
When they see it in person.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, well, and like neons, there's certain paints that like fade, like neons. Like people are asking a lot for neons right now, and there's this neon pink out there. It looks really cool, but literally it will last 6 months before it turns into like mauve brown. Like it turns into this crappy just tan color. And it might last longer if you like keep it in the dark when you're not writing it and all that kind of stuff. But but that's hard to explain to people, because I again, the company that I mentioned beforehand, they've got this rider that wanted a hot pink bike, and she shows me a picture of this bike, and I'm like, and then I go through all of the warnings, like it will blah blah blah, and I paint it, and it's completely different than the picture, and I'm like, listen, in 2 weeks it will be the color that you want, because it will fade through down to the color you want and then past it over the next 6 months. You know what I mean? So I was like, and she's like, well, I just can't find that color anymore. And I'm like, exactly. You can't find it because no one will do it, because they got so many warranty deals on it. Because it was a Quinaroo or Kinaroo or whatever that, I think it's Australian triathlon bike. Quinaroo, whatever.
I don't know.
But they were doing these hot pink bikes there for a second, and discontinued them, which is why this lady can't find one now. But that's why they stopped, is because that they were getting them sent back. Even, and if you don't, like, say you send it to the bike shop and they don't sell it in the first 6 months, you're going to get back like a mauve tan bike to repaint after a while. You know what I mean? So it's a mess trying to talk people off of those kind of ideas, you know?
Yeah. Somebody was asking what your thoughts were on paint versus powder coating for aluminum.
Well, you're talking to the right guy, because I also powder coat.
Oh, right on.
But you can only powder coat
a lot cheaper though, right?
Yes, and you can only powder coat metal though, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to melt powder coat at 400 degrees,
right?
Which takes out carbon fiber, right?
Yeah.
So
I powder coated a couple of my other bikes that I had back in the past, and I will say this. I'll say this: if you don't go to a place that knows how to powder coat a bike, especially a full suspension bike, I had one place that did a shitty job that I had to like sand a lot of parts down to get them to fit again. And then I had another place that did really well with like taping everything off. That way, like when I put my frame back together, it actually fit, But I will say that with the powder coating on, I powder coated at least 3 or 4 different bikes. It seems like they would like be more susceptible to accepting the stain of mud than a painted bike.
You mean in like not being able to wash it off, like staining it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because we have like this red clay out here, and I had like a neon. I did it like a neon tennis ball neon on one of mine, and that thing, dude, it stained pretty quickly. I had a white one too, and that one also.
It was that goddamn neon pigment. That neon pigment cannot last.
Yeah.
So powder coat, right? The thing with powder coat is you've got to have you've got to sandblast it, because powder coat, just like the scratches I talked about with paint, with powder coat you need it even rougher. So you got to have a tooth on that particular item for that powder coat to melt into. And it can look very nice, and you can do some cool stuff with powder coat, and there are cool colors in powder coat, but it is much more limited, because I can't mix like a little bit of white into this blue to lighten it up. Like, it's whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the way it comes. Right.
And so that's the thing with powder coat. They're hard to do more than one color. Like, again, a fade of powder is fine, but if you try to do like logos in powder coat, like it's very technical, because I got to get it up to like 180 degrees for 5 minutes to like solidify. And if I go too long, it gets too hard. But then I go and I mask off my thing and I paint that, or powder coat that, and then put it in for the full 400 degrees. And if I did it too long, they won't bond perfectly, and it'll be. So there are technical difficulties with powder coat. But I'd like to show you one thing right here. Those of you listening, I'm showing you a pocket knife that is brightly colored. That right there is Cerakote. Okay.
So what's Cerakote?
Cerakote is a nice mix between the powder and the paint world, in that you can put it on anything pretty much. It does have to cook, but you can cook it down to like 130 degrees. So let's say you do it on a carbon fiber bike, you can put it in, do whatever you're going to do, and then put it in the oven at 130 for 4 hours, versus, something metal like this, I can do it 180 for 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So now the downside to this is the colors are whatever they are. There's no mixing of colors. And but other than that, this stuff is so thin. A lot of times, if you see anything custom on a handgun or a rifle of any sort, of the stock or the barrel, it's Cerakote, because it's so thin that a lot of times you don't even have to mask anything off. Like the problem you're talking about, where you had to sand down some of your parts, with Cerakote you won't have that problem. It is microscopically thin, and so even on threads. Like if it's not like a super fine thread, you can just go right over the threads. It'll still thread on just fine. It's that nice.
Oh, wow. It's that thin. Wow. Does it come off then easily? Like it flake or like?
It's very hard. It's very hard. It's got like the impact resistance of the powder coat with the ease of application of paint. You know what I mean? And so, but they meet in the middle in that you have to cook them. And so, so where I came into this world is, so let's say you paint a bike, and the colors of the bike are called base paint, right, or base coats, and they take like 10 or 15 minutes before you can touch them. You know what I mean? They're wet to dry in 10 or 15 minutes, but the way that you finish off a paint job, because they don't look that good, and they're kind of a matte color, they're kind of blah, but you clear over the top of them, okay? And clear is where you're spending a lot of the money, because the base paints or whatever, but the clear, you can go, there is a gamut of clears out there in the world, from cheap to expensive, and believe me, you want the expensive. But clear takes 24 hours, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. You know what I mean? Except if you buy an oven, because if you can get it up to 120 to 140 degrees, it'll cut that time down to like 2 or 3 hours. And so that's where that completely changed my world, because what would happen is, so I've got this shop, and the paint booth is inside a shop. So it's like a building inside of a building.
Right.
So it's inherently a little bit cooler. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the middle of the summer, it's a little cooler, which is nice, but so it's hard for me to maintain 70 degrees is where you want to paint at, right? So I bought this oven, because what I would have to do is paint these bikes and then like walk them down to my house and put them in a bedroom to dry. Because if you're not at 70 degrees, they'll never dry. They'll just sit there and just stay wet until you get up to 70 degrees for 4 hours. Anyway, I bought this oven, which all nice, really nice automotive paint shops have. They like their paint booth will also heat up. So if you can get your paint up to 140 degrees, you can get it done in 2 hours, which means I can get an entire paint job done in a day now, where it used to take me at least 2 days. And I can get it done in like 5 or 6 hours, honestly, because if it's an easy enough thing, like one color with logos, like I can turn it around.
How big is an oven? I mean, like when you say oven, I think about what I put a pizza in. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you could do things like this in an oven like that, right? But
so like the knives for the people that are listening.
Yeah, sorry. My oven is approximately the size of a fridge, right? So I could put 4 or 5 bike frames in there. Now, once you have an oven, that's 99% of the powder coat problem, because you got to get up to 400 degrees to powder coat, right? So I got the oven for the painting anyway. But then since I had the oven, I was like, well, hell, I'll just start powder coating too, because you're already there.
Right.
And so that's where the powder coat and Cerakote came from.
Right on.
And so the oven is a deal maker for sure on all that kind of stuff.
What's an oven cost?
It's not cheap, because honestly, like they don't. Who else has 6 by 6 by 6 like metal box? You know what I mean? So I had to buy it. A guy made it up, and then it's pretty much wired just like an oven. I've got a control thing and with temp sensors and that kind of stuff, but it's just a big metal box with oven elements in it. You know what I mean?
Oh wow!
There's
so
3
it's like
elements.
Somebody makes that, like one off makes it. It's not like you go to like the paint oven store and you can pick one up.
Right. Well, and that's a whole other world. You know what I mean? Because there are industrial powder coaters that have ovens that are like the size of a whole shop. You know what I mean? And
The places that I took my bike, like if I wanted to get just like my frame done some funky color, like they would charge me more because their oven was like the size of a single car garage or something like that. And they'd be like, well, that's the only color. I guess that's the only color you could have in there at the time or something like that.
Yeah.
At least that's what they would tell me.
Yeah.
So then they were saying like, hey, if you want black or white, like we're doing all these fucking roof or like racks for people's trucks or, you know, bumpers or whatever. Like, yeah, we could put it in there with that and it'll cost you like half as much. But if you want tennis ball green, guess what, dude?
Yeah. So the oven and then, you know, power is involved with it, you know, because to run an oven, you got to have some pretty good power. And so because a lot of people like kind of paint out of their garage, you know what I mean? And like dust is like the enemy of a paint job, right? Because those little dust nibs that just land just right where you're looking all the time. They don't land like on the bottom side of the bottom bracket. They land like right on the top tube, of course.
Yeah.
You know, so
anybody that put a freaking screen protector on an iPhone or a cell phone totally knows what you're talking about.
Goddamn dust.
That one piece of dust, you're like, son of a bitch.
and tell me, iPhone protector people, how long did you sit there and you cleaned it off and you like had all your windows closed and everything and the dogs locked up You do all those things and you squeegee it and you put it down perfect, and there's a goddamn piece of dust in there.
Yeah, right.
And then it's ruined. You can't get it out. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so that's the same with paint too. But then that's where you kind of separate from the mediocre paint jobs to the nicer paint jobs, is with an actual paint space. Like I've got a hermetically sealed paint booth with a air system in it that blows the air through and like sucks in clean air. There's filters all over the place, and if you come within 20 feet of my paint up, and I'm like, get the hell out of here, like telling the kids to get the hell out of here, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the paint booth is really nice too, for sure.
Yeah, right on, man. What
and then
somebody asked in the comments, do you ever do anything custom, like paint guitars or anything like that, or will you paint anything?
Yeah.
Or you're down, huh?
I wouldn't really be interested in a car, really. Like I don't.
No, I said like, I see.
But a guitar, I've got a buddy that's super into guitars, and we've been going back and forth with, you know.
Yeah.
That would be super easy to do. We could do that easy.
Yeah.
Now, not being from that world, you'd probably have to like say, do not paint this part because it'll mess something up. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
if we were clear with the communications, that wouldn't be a problem at all. That'd be sweet. In fact, probably be even better than a bike, because it's just this nice flat object versus bikes that are tubes going all over the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I brought a helmet, one of my custom helmets. For people listening, just close your eyes and picture the coolest helmet you've ever seen. That's what I'm doing. Right. But
that is super rad. So it's like the base of the helmet is one color with some designs on it, and then the visor and a piece of the back is like a yellow with a cheetah print in it, and that's super rad.
But I mean, you see,
how much does something like that cost? Like if somebody want to paint their helmet to match their bike or whatever.
This particular thing would probably be $500 or $600. You know what I mean? Because you see every one of these little things, that's like half an hour out of my life. You know what I mean?
So he's pointing out all the vents of the helmet, like every little vent hole,
and making sure the inside doesn't get just destroyed with paint. You know what I mean? And so it's helmets are very hard to price, honestly, because they're so small. People are like, what's that, $50, $100? Like, no, it's probably should charge as much as a bike because it takes just as long, you know.
Oh wow, that's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Do you prefer painting like carbon versus aluminum versus steel? Like, is one like easier, or does it matter?
Probably carbon. I think I would prefer carbon, and especially if it's a brand new bike. Like I've got a couple contracts with bike companies that they will open. I'm on Open's paint list. Ventum bikes, they do kind of triathlon-y type bikes. I paint for them. There's a couple bikes out there. And while we're talking about it, you know, a lot of people freak out because they think, you know, doing anything will void their warranty. I am on Specialized preferred painters list, so I will not void a Specialized warranty. Santa Cruz, they don't really have a list per se, but what they say is you won't void the warranty if you do it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like they think, and I will do it right, I guess. Like So right. And then Yeti, I'm not exactly on their list, but I've done a bunch of stuff for them, so they at least know me. You know what I mean? But I don't want to say that I'm like I wouldn't void their warranty or anything like that. But I think if everyone was like upfront about it, I don't think we'd have problems with that. So I mean that's a big deal for people worried about that kind of stuff. But
that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to take a couple $1,000 frame and be like, oh, now I can't, you know, get a warranty on it. That would suck.
But the deal with metal versus carbon fiber, with metal, paint doesn't like to stick to metal, right? So you got to primer it. And there's like with steel has got its own particular little quirks with primers versus aluminum versus like titanium. Titanium's awesome. I like working with titanium. And then that's when we get back into Cerakote. Like metal frames like you could do some cool stuff with Cerakote on metal frames because you don't have to primer them at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can just go straight to color. So it's I've dealt with a couple because that's one of those little niche things that's going on in the world is all these hand built frames that guys are doing. There's two or three guys in Salt Lake that are hand building frames. I mean, they're like, because you can buy a bike in a box. That's literally what they call it. And it'll be like Columbus tubing or those old school Columbus bikes. And it'll have everything in it in a box about the size like a shoebox damn near. And but you got to know how to brace it, and you got to have a jig so that all your angles are just right, you know, with your head tube and your bottom bracket and all that kind of stuff. And there's guys that old school braze it like with a torch and like brazing rod. And there's guys that weld them. There's with titanium, you have to TIG weld, which is, you know, you got your rod and your heat source and everything, but you got to completely gas out. Like with argon, you got to keep your temperature.
Yeah, that's
like,
the thing with titanium. They have to like pump the frame full of like a certain gas or something like that in order to make it like work right or whatever. Yeah, that's crazy.
I would love to do that honestly because I went to school. I should be a banker. Like I went to school for finance and economics, but like in retrospect, I'm God, I should have gone to like welding. You know what I mean? Because welders are never out of a job, you know, but bankers could lose their job whenever. But
right.
And welders probably make more money really if you're good at it. But I kind of wish I had that skill because those TIG welders, the way those guys do it, I mean, it's so intricate, and you got to have your power and your heat and everything just right, and you got to pump in argon, like you were saying, because oxygen does something to it. I don't know what exactly, but it's all fascinating stuff.
Yeah, there's some money to be made there for sure. Like I don't know, like nowadays it seems like it's kind of like the blue collar type of jobs are like looked down on a little bit or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like people like have some kind of like, if you're not in a suit, you're like kind of doing it wrong kind of perception. But I mean, I got a buddy that's like does drywall and makes like $200,000 a year. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, that's pretty fucking good money, man. You know, slinging around some drywall, you know.
What is dirty hands, clean money, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But, well, and that's the thing. But on the flip side of what you said about looking down on them, like, I think a lot of those, like, cubicle dwelling type people, they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and they see something hand built and custom painted, and whatever, like it's a one of a kind, you know what I mean? Like you go and you get the specific hand built gravel grinder you want, and then you come to me and we do the exact colors that you want. I mean, that's people are paying good money for that, and I think it's worth it because if you get a hand built bike, you're never going to sell that bike. You're going to keep that bike forever. You know what I mean? So, because it's made specifically for you, and I think you know that going into it, and therefore, and especially with steel, you can't leave steel out because it'll rust. Like literally, the second they get done brazing or welding that together, they got to get it painted as soon as possible because it'll just start rusting immediately. You know. Yeah. So steel's cool for that, and that's a large part of my business is that kind of stuff. Those one-off bikes.
Mm-hmm. Right, which is
cool.
So you said you've been doing this for about 6 years. Like, how quickly did it ramp up to? Like, was it just kind of like a pretty cool side gig? Like you did like one bike a week or something like that, or like, and then just this COVID hit and you're like, oh shit, now I'm like way too busy, or like, did it just slowly progress to getting more and more busy? How did that work out?
Well, like I said, I kind of already had, you know, on Instagram, I had 5,000 or 6,000 followers already just from the video stuff down in Moab.
I see.
And so just a natural continuance of that with the bikes, like everyone that follows me is already into bikes, right?
Right.
Then I started painting bikes, and then it was just, like I said, if I would have just started out just with one follower and hey, look at my bike, I don't know where the hell I'd be. It was just like pure accidental happenstance that I just painted my own 3 bikes, and immediately somebody wanted to pay me to paint their bike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and like we kind of talked about, like I've always been worried about going off on my own because something bad could happen. The world could turn south. But the world did turn south, and I've never been busier. So now it's like there's like, and bikes are just going up. Like people are getting into them. It's becoming a thing. Like everyone's always kind of just had bikes, but now they're a thing. Like putting serious money into a bike is, and I live in Utah, and I will talk to Richard from Sticker about this, but like up there in the Utah Valley, like up in the kind of the more populated parts of Utah, you look across there, there's nothing but new houses as far as the eye can see. You know what I mean? And these are all, I mean, this is a lot of money for us, but $500,000 to $1 million houses out there. And like, I think every one of those people need a custom painted bike, and I want to be the guy that does it. And so I don't think I don't, and I'm just one guy, right? I'm not like having to keep 6 employees busy or anything like that. So I really think I could do it. You know what I mean? But I gotta advertise, which I haven't done yet. And so that's the thing, is like I haven't advertised specifically because I didn't want to get overwhelmed. But now it's like one thing's got to give, and I'm gonna go with the painting. And so now I'm going to kind of turn it on. So now I got T-shirts. I'll buy a T-shirt. I think it's a cool T-shirt. Look at this shirt.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, that's pretty rad. And then you have all your gear. Yeah, all your gear is matching. I have a set of these hand-up gloves here.
Hell yeah, you do.
Match your bike. These are super rad. How did you end up doing that collaboration with Hand Up?
Well, I was one of their ambassadors. But I told him, because I was already in the bike world, right? And I told him, it's like, hey, let's go. Because as everyone knows, like I had this Yeti on order for probably 9 months before it actually got completely built. So I already knew what I was going to do with it. I knew everything. And I got all the parts way before I got the frame. So, I mean, I Cerakoted the stem. I Cerakoted everything on that bike. Like there's not one part of that bike that has not been customized in some way. And I reached out to Hand Up and told them what we were going to do. And I already had the vector already drawn up for them. So it was a slam dunk for them. And so we just made a little deal on that, because they team up with people all the time. So that they're cool that way. But but yeah, so and then everything just came together about middle of last November, where I finally got the bike done. The gloves were ready to go. And so like we just dropped everything all at the same time. And it was a home run for everybody, I think, because the gloves sold out. Like that was my
when I saw them right away, I was like, oh, those are super cool, man. I'm getting a set of those. Well, I think I might have even seen the gloves before I saw the bike.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was my worst fear. I was like, they were only going to sell 3 pair of them to me, and then like they just have all these. But they said they sold out, so that's good. I mean, maybe they only had 10 made. I don't know.
Right. Well, I got one of them. So
yeah, there you go. But
I saw on your Yeti behind you that I want to say like the eagle is yellow, the eagle cog on the cassette, but like not the whole cassette. How did you have to take the cassette apart to do that, or?
I masked it off, and that's Cerakote. You know what I mean?
So does that stuff like spray on, or is it like a powder and you just like to what?
Yeah, it's spray on. You spray on with an actual paint gun, and but then you got to cook it, right? But so that's why it's like a mixture of the powder coat and the paint. Because you spray it on like paint, but it's hard like powder coat, and you got to cook it like powder coat. But it's because powder coat, I don't know if you know, like you've got to have like a positive and negative charge. Yeah.
I thought they did that magnetically.
Powder coat's it's kind of a pain in the ass. and it's literally powder. It's like just put some baby powder in your hand and blow it. That's what powder coat looks like when it comes out of the gun. It's just like a mist, like a fog of powder of color.
Uh-huh.
And that's why you got to have the positive and negative charges, is so that it'll actually stick. Because otherwise, it'd just go right around your product into the fan and just gone into the ether, But the charge is what sticks it. But then that's what's funny about you want to get into powder coat talk. Like on a flat surface, again, it's super easy because it's just there. But you get anything that's enclosed, and those two goddamn things, like because of the electrical charge, they like fight each other. And so your powder's going through there, and it'll push from one to the other and then out the other side, and there'll be like bald spots in the inside of this stuff. It's weird. It's weird stuff. Like you gotta there's a lot of it's like just like anything. Like if you scratch the surface, there's a whole world of knowledge underneath powder coat.
Right.
Just like there's a whole world of knowledge underneath welding, underneath painting, underneath IT. Like I don't know anything about your world. Like I'm sure there's like entire lifetimes to learn like what you deal with. You know what I mean? So
yeah, totally.
It's depending on how much you want to get into something, you can pretty much devote your life to it.
So talk to me about the clear coat that you put on a bike. Like, is there like different ones that you can use? Like, do you do something that's better than probably what's coming from the factory, or like, do you what's up? Is there one clear coat, or is there like different kinds, like different grades?
There's a million. Picture Mako paint jobs. You know what I mean? They probably do one coat of like super cheap clear, because the clear is what makes the paint look good. Because like I said before, paint by itself is just this blah, like kind of a matte finish. It looks horrible. And if you have any kind of flake on it, any kind of sparkle in it or pearl, it doesn't look like anything until you clear it. Like the clear is what makes everything look good. And so, but with clear, picture like on a cheaper bike, and not cheaper, like I don't want to make it sound like it's not good, but on just like a factory bike, you know how you can feel the logos? Like if you run your fingers over the top of it.
Yeah.
That's what they do, is they do whatever they're doing with the colors, and then they put like maybe 2 coats of clear on and then out the door. Now you come to kind of a nicer paint job like mine, and I do those first 2 coats of clear, cook it. When I get it out, I can sand it down again, and you can sand all those ridges out. Inherently, I'm sanding out dust nibs. You know what I mean? Because even with my hermetically sealed paint booth, I still get dust. You know what I mean? So you sand all those out, and then I can put 3 or 4 or 5, however many more coats of clear on that I want. And you know those old, like, it's like, it seems like they're always on Mercuries, those old like really roundy type cars where it'll be black most of the time, and then the sun will come in and it's like got a little bit of red. It's like it's they like, the word to describe it is like a depth. It looks like the paint is like 3 feet deep. You know what I mean? That's clear. That's somebody has put in a bunch of time on the clear. And even after they put on their 5th or 7th coat of clear, then you do what's called a cut and buff. You get like 2,000 grit sandpaper and you sand it all down, make sure, because there's orange peel inherently in clear. That's where your orange peel comes from, which is, that kind of just the texture of a paint job. But if you sand it down, you sand like with flat sandpaper, just, you picture it like it hits the tops of everything. So if you sand long enough, like it sands the tops of everything down to flat. And then you buff it up to where you just got this mirror shine. And so that's where a lot of the, when you get $1,000 paint job on a bike, because I do all that kind of stuff. Like all my paint jobs have at least 5 coats of clear on them. I do them once, and then I sand off the edges and the dust nibs, and then I do at least 3 more. You know what I mean? Just because that's what makes them look the best, And there's
does that make it like, is there something like, is there different grades of that? Like you could get one that's gonna take a rock strike better than the other one, or?
Excuse me. Yeah, there's different grades because Mercedes has one out that's called ceramic clear, and it's supposedly a little bit harder. It won't take a rock chip. It's super expensive though. It's like probably 4 times as expensive as the that I use House of Color, which is what show car guys use. You know what I mean? Because it's got the nicest finish. Because that's what I'm after. Now, what I do after that though to protect against the rock chips, especially on mountain bikes, right, is I recommend the paint protection. And I've actually recently teamed up with InvisiShield.
With who?
So if InvisiShield,
Okay.
they're just one of those. They've got the computer animate like cut out things to where like everything's perfectly matched to your bike. So if we paint your bike, if I paint your bike, like we could team up and I can get you like $10 off one of their kits also. You know what I mean? So so we can go that way. But I highly recommend you protect your
so do you put that stuff on the bike? Do you put that stuff on the bike for them, or do you send it to somebody else, or you let the customer do that?
I usually don't, and just because you want to wait like 3 weeks after you clear to put that stuff on, because even though I cook it in my oven or whatever, there's still like it's called outgassing. Like it still breathes for probably 2 to 3 weeks even after that. So you want it to be able to do that before you cover it, right? So in this,
so like
this
when
is
you
like
get
in a
your
perfect
custom
world.
painted bike, you should still wait a couple of weeks before you're out there riding it around.
Well, that's in a perfect world. You know what I mean? Like if you put it on a week after or the day after, you could do it, but it might like kind of fog up the plastic a little bit or something. I don't know what it would do, honestly, and the plastic is permeable too. So like I think everything would breathe through. But in a perfect world, if you're not in a hurry, yes, wait your 2 weeks and then put the stuff on. So therefore I usually don't do it. And those companies, most people that are doing it, like they don't know how to do it. So I mean they've got like detailed instructions. They give you all the parts, like little squeegees and that kind of stuff to do it. And it's very intricately cut out. So it's like, like this goes on your drive side seat stay. And it's got little arrows where everything should line up and stuff. So
I don't think I got the patience to put one of those on, man.
I don't. Yeah.
I don't think I do. My Bronson I have right now, when I bought it had that that stuff on it. I don't know what it was called, freaking Visiframe or whatever. But I wanted to get decals done, from Richard. So it was like, I'm peeling all that shit off. And I was just looking at it all. I was like, there's no way I would put all this on. I'd rather let my bike get all scratched up and deal with it.
Well, and some of it is overkill. But, on my bikes, I definitely put it on the down tube. You know what I mean? Because that gets beat to hell.
Yeah.
And the top tube, just because a lot of times you get little rubby marks and that kind of stuff from your pants or your knee pads or whatever. So those 2 spots for sure. Outside of that, though, most bikes come with some kind of big rubber thing for the chainstay on the drive side chainstay.
Yeah,
and then outside of that, like a lot of times I just wrap like electrical tape around the stays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to get beat up, but I don't really want I want to be able to change it out quick too. Because even that clear stuff gets beat up too. Like it doesn't take hits too well. I mean, it protects your paint, but it gets beat up, so.
Yeah, totally. I have a bunch of decals on my bike right now from Richard that looks like a, not decals, but like frame protection. That's kind of like looks like it's a smoke kind of color on it. And so it's on a clear decal. So it still shows the paint color through the bike. And I actually, now that we're talking about it, I have it on the top tube, and I do kind of like having that up there because there's too many times that you're like sitting on your top tube or something, and you end up scratching it because you had something dumb in your pocket, or you didn't realize your butt was all muddy from the downhill that you did, and next thing you know, you got this big scratch in the top tube. So I could see that definitely. I see where you're coming from for sure there.
Well, and with those two things, they're big, nice, and long and straight. So you
Yeah,
can
those are simple.
you can go to like a clear broad type applicator, and a lot of times they'll sell you there because there's always like leftovers of whatever job they're working on. So you can just get that stuff. It's if you want to go intricately around your chainstays and stuff, that's where the pre-cut stuff is really helpful. But anyway, it's all I'm trying to straighten out my hat, but I'm backwards here.
All the people on the podcast don't care, man.
Yeah. so it just depends, and I think that stuff's like, I think it's probably $100, and you don't have to do it, you know what I mean? But again, some people are really into it. So like I said, I reached out to a bunch of different ones, and Invisis Shield is the one that kind of came back and said that they'd give us a deal, and they're just as good. Everyone's using the same stuff, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, there's only so many like kinds of like 3M plastic or whatever, you know, like it's just one guy and it's got, you know, whatever. So do you how do you do all the custom like designs and stuff on there? Do you have like a machine that's cutting plastics for you to cut out your stencils, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's exactly how it works. It's usually I just use vinyl. And it's just regular old like live, laugh, love vinyl, like wall vinyl. But and that's what I've got is just, it's kind of a consumer size, just vinyl cutter. Because all I need, the color doesn't matter. I use orange, like the ugliest orange, just because then I can see my stuff better. You know what I mean? And that's where a little bit of difficulty comes in, is getting the logos, because Specialized, for example, I'm on their list, their paint list. They still will not give me their logo files.
Right.
Like they are super locked down on that. And I guess maybe they deal with a lot of like people ripping off their bikes. I really don't know. It must be it. But so you have to go, you either have to create your own, like try to find a good enough file online to where you can stick it into Adobe Illustrator and outline it. That's what I do most of the time. And then, because then you can kind of, because I kind of know what it is. And then, even I've reached out to Richard a bunch of times because he's so fast at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he has
that's one of those things like with his business that, people don't realize that it's not like you just call up Santa Cruz or Specialized or whatever, and you're like, hey man, hook me up with all your files. Like it doesn't work that way. So a lot of that shit, you have to like go measure those bikes or, whatever you're going to do to like mask it off and scan it or whatever. And that stuff takes time. So it's like, that's very time consuming. And especially when it's like, not your gig, you know what I mean? Like I dabble with that stuff, and man, sometimes it'd be like, I could screw around with something for like 3 hours and Richard could do it in like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm on YouTube watching freaking videos. I'm like, what the hell, man?
That's why I learned everything I know is on YouTube.
Right.
And that's exactly it, because time is money, right? And that's honestly, that's one thing that's kind of cool about the day job, though, is a lot of times I'll take my laptop to the day job. And when I get done with whatever I'm doing there, then it's like, okay, then I start typing away, and I'm like on Adobe Illustrator trying to get stuff straightened out. And I measure, I just measure out the bikes, but a lot like where they want the logo. But a lot of times people want either something cool, like they want like a different type of logo or a different font. And a lot of times there'll be like a drop shadow. You know what I mean? Like I've got a drop shadow on my Yeti there. There's a black drop shadow behind the Yeti. And a lot of times we'll do some kind of like paint, or I don't know, like a brush effect font, that looks like somebody physically like used a paintbrush to do it. I do fonts like that all the time, because if you're repainting your bike and you don't work for Yeti or Cannondale or whoever, like who gives a shit if we use their exact logos? You know what I mean? Let's make it cool.
Right. Right.
So
Like if you're doing a Simpsons friggin' bike, you can use Simpsons font to say Santa Cruz instead of Santa Cruz
exactly.
font, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So we do just different fonts all the time, and there's just places online. I send people just to a website online and just have them pick out a font that they like, and they'll just go through there and just pick something out, and you just download it.
That can be time consuming, man. I made business cards the other day, dude. I probably spent at least 45 minutes trying to figure out what fucking fonts I wanted to use, man. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's the just having too many options, right? If there were three of them on there, you can just pick one quick. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just like mock up 3 or 4 fonts with their logos and then send them a picture of it, just have them pick one. Because I know they're going to, if I just turn them loose, it'll take forever. You know what I mean? So, because I just did this Cannondale in this really pretty color, and we did it a complete. Because I even have Cannondale's files, but he wanted, because the Cannondale's pretty thin, like their natural logo, and we did the logos in such a pretty color that we wanted the logos to be like big and blocky, so that like the cool color would come through, right? So we did this huge blocky logos on it. That was just this other font that I just downloaded online, big blocky font. So there's a million options. Honest to God, like there's so many colors of paint out there. There's so many. I can put the logos in the same spot on top of the down tube, on the bottom of the down tube. I can do something cool on the top tube, do some kind of design. Like I don't know if you saw, like probably 2 weeks ago, we did one that we made it look like a guy fly fishing in the dark. So I did like these pine trees up the down tube, like on the kind of the bottom half of the down tube, right? Mm-hmm. And on top, I did this color changing, like blue to purple paint, and then like speckled the silver paint over the top of it, so it looked like kind of like the night sky, right? Mm-hmm. And then I glossed, because gloss and matte are two different things, right? I glossed the night sky and I matted the trees, and then we had on the head tube, it was a specialized, but on the head tube we had like just the silhouette of a fly fisherman, and his line went all the way down the top tube to a fly like back by the seat tube.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a cool project, and those guys, they were just like, well, it's for a bike shop owner, and they said he's into fly fisherman or fly fishing. He doesn't want it too wild, but he wants it cool. So we weren't going pink and yellow, right? So I like had muted colors. But I mean, even though there was no pink and yellow, like that job still took me a week, like of constant working on it, because the difference between matte and gloss is a lot of times what you'll do is if you want matte, you gloss it first, which is your normal clear, right? Right. Because the matte and the gloss are two different types of clear. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you'll clear it the normal way first, which is the gloss, and then you have to mask that off and put an additional coat of matte on the spots that are open. So matte is like just a one last step to get the matte, Yeah. Projects like that, I mean, those are the ones I like, because honestly, the funny thing about all this is it's not even most about the money as much as it is about like how cool the project is, and then putting it on Instagram and just blowing people's minds on it. Like that's where the fun part is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, totally.
Somebody asked up here earlier, and I think I probably know the answer to this, but they were asking about whether you recommend decals from Stickered or Slick, or is painting them better. And I think, in my opinion, if you're getting a custom bike painted, you're going to want to get your graphics painted, as well, because you don't want that to have like nothing on it if you did decide to sell it, right? But then there is stuff that you want like graphics like for the wheels or whatever to match it, then go hit up Stickered for something like that. But as far as
on my own bike, right? And for those first seeing, like the listening, you can't really see it obviously, but like my fork lowers, what I did is I painted them pink, but then I reached out to Richard. Like we were working with this. He and I worked on this from the get-go.
Yeah.
He did my Fox logos, but
Right.
he did them 1,000 times more like detailed than I could ever do with paint. Right? There's little fades and there's little trees and there's little palm trees and there's sunsets and there's all kinds of stuff in my Fox logo here that I couldn't, like I guess I could do it with paint, but it would take me a year just to do the lowers. So if you want to paint your bike, like a lot of times what we do is people, well, in these Envies, I am running Envy rims. Like no one else has got those Envy stickers. Those are exactly like a vector that I drew up for Richard. Or well, I showed him what I wanted, and then he drew it up pretty much. But like a lot of times, what we'll do is if it's a package deal where it's a person that knows the two of us and we're all working together, I paint the bike. I spray paint some kind of cardboard or something like that. I mail it to Richard, so he's got the exact color that bike's going to be. Then he can match it with his stickers, and then we have like everything totally matchy, you know. So there's like you can do one or the other, but like us working together will like take it to the next level. You know what I mean? So,
right. But I mean, as far as it like saying Yeti or you know the model of the bike or whatever, like you would want those painted on there unless you were like, even I would assume even if you wanted to get crazy, you would at least want them painted on there like a regular flat color. That way, if you took the decals off, that it would still at least say the name of the bike on it and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's depends on what you want to do with it because, and you might know this dude, George Young. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
He rides out there, but he's another guy I've met through Richard. What we did he's got a bike and it's just about to drop, but he did this really dark color on the frame, and I just painted it the one color, and then him and Richard are doing all the logos on it. You know what I mean? So it was cheaper.
Nuts on it then. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. And so honestly, it's way easier for me to just do one color. So if you want to kind of get something custom, but ultimately save a little money, for sure, go to both of us, because I'll just do one color and it's like bam, bam, and I'm done. I don't have to mask anything off. And then you go to Richard and you've been dealing with him and you've got some kind of really intricate like logos that you've got cut out. Yeah. And then you've got the beautiful paint with the logos and you're good. So whatever, you know, it's all the same.
Kind of what I want to do to my kind of what I want to do to my gravel bike. I have a carbon gravel bike and I just want it to be like that base carbon kind of flat, you know, look, the whole thing. And then I'll just do whatever decals I want. So then whatever, you know, 8 months from now, when I decide pink's not my color anymore and I want it to be purple or I want it to be green, then I can just like peel all my decals off, put some new ones on. That's cool, you know. But I think if I was going to do like a regular mountain bike, like a real paint job, I would probably want to get a little crazy with it.
Well, yeah, and it's just a little bit of everything. Like it's a sliding scale. Every one of these things, it's like it depends is the answer, and it depends on what you want. And you know, if money's no object, let's go nuts. But if you want to save a little bit, let's kind of me and Richard could double team it. And there's obviously things that he can do that I can't. It depends. But right now it's 3 or 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks, okay.
Well, but if I get busier, then you know it would stretch out. But I'm working on, again, like back to the doing this full time. I've kind of got just like my website's just one of the ones you can put together on Shopify, you know. But I'm kind of working on upping that, and then you know coming out with like your base price. One color is X, and then if you want the logos, it's $50 more. And if you want this and this and this, you know what I mean? So that people can kind of see, so they don't just hear it's $1,000 and blah, 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 you know, so they can like detail it out. But one of the options I was going to come out with for a little bit of extra money is, let's say I am 2 months out, but you want to keep your bike, you know, for a little extra money, I'll put you in the queue. and just keep your bike there moving up. And then when we're about 2 weeks out from starting to work on your bike, I let you know. And then so you're only away from your bike for just a couple weeks instead of 6 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just different ways to to help people out and also help me out, because I probably field. Well, I bet 5% of people go from just like DMs on Instagram to actual jobs. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
so out of 100 people that contact you on a DM saying they want to get their bike painted, 5 of them actually follow through, is what you're saying.
Right. And most of it's just price, because a lot of it's honestly like 13-year-old dudes like, how much to paint my rock hopper, and like $1,000, and they're like, oh my, that, how many lawn mowing that job that is,
You're all, dude, go buy some rattle cans, man, you'll be good.
So it all depends, you know what I mean? But I know having me just sit on your bike for 6 weeks is a little bit of a problem, but it's also like, you got to look at from my side, like a lot of times what happens is I have the capability of painting about 4 bikes at a time. So it's like I take 4 bikes all the way through, and then another 4 bikes all the way through.
Yeah, I got it.
And then another 4 bikes, so that's where the weight comes in. And so, but sometimes your bike might be easy enough that I can just stick it in this job. You know what I mean? So, if I've got your bike, I might get it done earlier. And I say 6 weeks, honestly, it might only be a week. You might be really lucky because somebody else didn't send me theirs. So it depends, just like everything.
Yeah. I'll just try to get an idea, though. I mean, I think 6 weeks is reasonable. I mean, it's not like,
well, right now it's 3. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we're in the middle of the season. You know what I mean? So it obviously it slows down. Oh,
yeah. Well, yeah. I guess
when
so
it's
for you
hot
guys.
as shit. When it's super hot, well, yeah, you guys are just all year round you can ride. But out here, I mean, it snows, and so winter is busy for me.
Oh, okay.
Because no one's on their bike anyway. There's a good 4 to 6 months where you literally cannot ride. So
yeah, that's crazy. I'm not used to that. I'm definitely used to being in Northern California, where I'm like, what do you mean season?
Spoiled.
We have drink
brats,
a lot of
man.
water season and not drink much water season. That's what we have.
That's I get. You can go down. Moab usually doesn't get snowed in, but occasionally they do. But Moab's usually year round, but it gets cold because I mean it'll get to 0 degrees down in Moab. You know what I mean? So,
right on, man.
But a lot of people, Cedar City is southern Utah. A lot of people head down south, just kind of, or we go to California and ride our bikes out there with you people.
Right. With you people. Dude, it's just about 2 hours right now, man. I'm super stoked that you took the time.
I'm just getting started. What else are we going to talk about?
Right.
Okay, so after you subscribe to his to B1KER Podcast's Instagram, go to Tech, just with TEC_GNAR. Right. I sell painted bikes. I sell T-shirts that stickered designed, one of them at least, and I'm doing these custom painted, custom Cerakoted pocket knives. I think they're cool because a lot of like mountain bikers don't really have pocket knives a lot of times for whatever reason. You know what I mean? But this one right here, ultra light, packable. You can put that in your fanny pack or your backpack and just have it just to help you out or whatever. It's super light. So I've even got one that's not quite as bright. It's just dark blue and black. But
yeah, and anybody that's listening in the show more of the YouTube video, there is a link to his website as well. I think on your podcast app in the show description, there should be a link there as well. So definitely be able to get over there if you can't remember how to spell it. But because social media is like almost impossible to get the same name on every platform. So in some cases it may be TEC-NAR, GNAR, and some of them is like a .NAR. But I think if at the very least you can go to the website, which is tec-gnar.com. And So before we go, I always ask people what other YouTube channels they watch, because it's always interesting. It doesn't have to be about mountain bikes. Like you could be like, yeah, I like watching this basket weaving channel or something like that. So is there any channels that you're digging on lately?
Don't make fun of me.
All right, let's hear it.
All day at work. Don't tell my boss. I don't know if my boss is listening or not. I watch StarCraft tournaments.
Oh, yeah.
You remember StarCraft?
Yeah, I had a buddy who used to play that game.
StarCraft, I played StarCraft 1, but StarCraft 2 is like 20 goddamn years old. It is still super popular. And those dudes dudes and chicks, whatever, like everyone's doing it. But you watch them play that game, that is fascinating to me. Because I used to play it, but I used to cheat. You could put in the cheat codes of like God mode where you could you had infinite money and infinite gas and all this kind of stuff because you're trying to get money and gas to build your things. But StarCraft 2 tournaments are fascinating to me. That is my thing that I don't tell anyone. So shh, don't.
Right, we'll keep it on the down low. We won't tell anybody else. Right on, man. Well, like I said, dude, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with me. It's been really interesting to hear your story and how you got started and how you are to where you are now. And definitely, if anybody's interested in getting their bike painted or a helmet or I guess guitar even, hit him up, man. Hit Dustin up. Go swing by his website or his Instagram. Shoot him a message, and you guys can work it out from there. So outside of that, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just keep in touch because there's gonna be things happening here as soon as if somebody can find a bike to give away, it's gonna be given away. But that's the bad part is like finding a bike. No one can find a bike right now.
Yeah, and we'll have the Lone Wolf actually is supposed to be on next week, so we'll be able to talk. Maybe by next week he'll have a bike in the works, and we'll be able to grill him on what the story is with that. But those of you guys that haven't hit the thumbs up button yet, you guys should probably do that because that makes me happy. And if you've been considering hitting the subscribe button, that would be great too, because I like to see the subscriber count go up because it makes me feel like you guys are digging it. There's new people that are coming along that are into the show. And if you're just listening to the show every week, but you're not subscribing, it's like, just do me a favor, man. Click the button. It only takes a second. And then I feel like I'm actually out here spending my Sunday evenings getting somewhere, right? So anyways, if you don't want to do that, but you do want to see a little bit more content for free, swing by my Instagram, like I said earlier, at B1KER. And so that's B1KER B1, because that's the one that I actually got on all of them. Can you believe that? I got all of the social medias like that. So nonetheless, there is one thing though that I like to tell you guys. I want you guys to keep in mind. It only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.